This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. In late January, for the first time, President Obama publicly confirmed the American use of drone strikes in tribal areas in Pakistan. He answered a question on the subject during a Google video conference with people around the United States. He said, "I want to make sure that people understand that actually drones have not caused a huge number of civilian casualties. For the most part, they have been very precise, precision strikes against Al-Qaeda and their affiliates." Debate continues about how many people, including civilians, have been killed in those drone attacks. Drones are technically known as unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. These aircraft, however, are not just used for airstrikes, and they are not just used by governments. Drones are useful for aerial photography, including industrial tasks like pipeline inspections. And human rights activists, environmental groups, and journalists are increasingly using drones in their work. Drones can fly above news events to capture images that reporters may not be able to get close to on the ground. Matt Wade is a journalism professor at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. Students in his drone journalism lab are exploring different uses for drones in news reporting. He says, drone journalism as an idea is less than a year old at this point. The first instance I saw was a labor protest in Poland where a man had a remote-controlled helicopter and he put a camera on it and he flew it up and got just a view of the protests from the air. And you could see police moving into position to kind of block the protest route. A video on YouTube shows images captured by the so-called robo-copter. A group of citizen journalists in Moscow used a similar drone camera to record protests during Russian parliamentary elections. And Professor Wade noted a recent environmental case in the United States captured by someone flying his remote-controlled airplane. He spotted a meat-packing plant that was polluting a nearby creek that ran into a nearby river. He had images of a river of blood flowing out of this meatpacking plant, which was against the law. And environmental regulatory authorities were alerted to it. Drone use in the United States is now rare because of federal restrictions on airspace. However, a new law calls for easing those restrictions by 2015. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. The modern way to collect signatures on a petition requires no paper or pen or standing on a street for hours. Change.org and other websites let people start or sign online petitions. There are many different reasons why people start petitions at change.org. The top causes range from animal protection to criminal justice to women's rights. Lauren Todd of New York started a petition a few months ago after she saw a picture of a girl's shirt on Facebook. The shirt read, "I'm too pretty to do homework, so my brother has to do it for me." As Ms. Todd told CBS television, it was outrageous enough to be posted on Facebook, But it was actually more outrageous than that. And I felt like I needed to do something about it. Her petition urged shoppers to boycott JCPenney stores until they stopped selling shirts with what she called sexist messages. 5 hours later, Shelby Knox started tweeting about the petition to her thousands of Twitter followers. Ms. Knox is the director of women's rights organizing forchange.org. Some of her followers also started tweeting about the shirt and signing the petition. Ms. Knox says, from the time that Lauren started the petition on change.org and JCPenney pulled the shirt, it was about 10 hours, in which it got over 2,000 signatures, and at one point was generating over 400 tweets a minute. She said that with each new signature, an email automatically went to JCPenney's public relations team. Another went to the company's chief. JCPenney, without comment, discontinued the shirts. Clothing designer John Noon has worked with a number of large stores. He says he has always used words like pretty or princess when he creates shirts for girls. It's easier to sell a shirt that says, "My little princess," than "my A student," he says. But now, with the internet, consumers who take offense can do more than just write an angry letter to the company. Another clothing seller, Forever 21, got in trouble not long after JCPenney. Forever 21 was selling a girl's shirt that read, "Allergic to algebra." It stopped selling them the day after the story spread. Robin Sacken is a professor at New York's Fashion Institute of Technology. She says children are influenced by their parents, not the words on a shirt. So if my child says to me, "Mommy, I want to get that," I've said, "Okay, you can have it, but just remember something. I don't care if you're pretty. You're doing your homework." For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Benjamin Stassen took his own life in 2010. His parents thought their 21-year-old son was happy. Since his suicide, they have attempted to learn why he killed himself. Alice and Jay Stassen thought Benjamin's Facebook account might hold clues to his suicide. But the account does not belong to them, nor did it belong to their son. Facebook owns everything in his account. That is what the company says in its user agreement. Jay Stassen says he found it difficult even to communicate with Facebook. If you search on the home page of Facebook for an email address, a mailing address, a phone number, or a contact person to help, he says, you will find little information. A court ordered the company to let the Stassens see their son's account, but Facebook has yet to obey the order. 34-year-old Mac Tonys died in his sleep in 2009. He left behind a lot of online friends, many of whom liked his futuristic blog, Post-Human Blues. Work on the blog stopped when he died. A short time later, the comments area was filled with unwanted advertising. That angered his friend, Dia Sobin. He said the advertising, or spam, dishonored his friend. Lawyer John Boucher stays informed about digital rights and the law. but he admits that he and his wife have signed many user agreements without reading them. He says he would not know how to get information from his wife's accounts if she dies. Mr. Boucher says he thinks that laws will be written over time to deal with these situations, but it will take a long time to be accepted by the states. Some businesses now are offering people a way to control what happens to their online information after they die. One way to do this is to place your online accounts and passwords in a digital storage area. You give the owners of the area orders about which information to destroy and which to give others when you die. Mark Plattner was one of Mac Tony's friends. He recently used a program called SiteSucker to download Mac's blog. He then uploaded a copy of the blog to a new website under his control. Mark Plattner says we should all plan our own digital legacy. He says, don't be passive. Get to work on your online afterlife now. And that's the VOA Special English Technology Report. You can leave comments about this story at voaspecialenglish.com. I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Today, we continue our report on efforts by the Obama administration to increase internet freedom around the world. Alec Ross, a senior advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, recently discussed these projects with VOA's Persian News Network. He says, we're spending this money so that values that are centuries old, that go to things like the freedom of expression, the freedom of the press, and the freedom to organize, are available in the digital age. The New York Times reported that the State Department expects to have spent about $70 million on these efforts by the end of this year. Alec Ross says one project involves a so-called panic button. People could use it to quickly remove a list of contacts from a phone or computer. He says what's happening right now is people are being arrested and they are being forced to hand over their passwords a lot of the times for their social media accounts. Freedom House, an organization in Washington, released a Freedom on the Net report in April. The group studied 37 countries. It found that 23 of them had arrested internet users for content posted online. 19 of the countries at least partially controlled international connections to the internet, and at least 12 had interfered with networks, listened in on people's communications, or taken down websites. Iran has one of the most extensive systems of online censorship. The Iranian government controls all internet entry points into the country. Iran has also announced plans to build its own national internet. But the Wall Street Journal reported last month that few people think Iran could completely cut its links to the wider internet. The newspaper said Iran could move toward a system of two internets like a few other countries. Ken Berman leads anti-censorship projects for the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the parent agency of VOA. He says China is considering the same thing, of basically having a closed system that would be hard for outside information to get in on. Alec Ross at the State Department says the global community should respond wherever freedom of expression is under attack. Sometimes that is in countries that have more closed information environments. But oftentimes, frankly, it's in countries where the United States has friendly relationships with their governments, but where we have differences of opinions about how open an information environment should be. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Technology Report. Builders in developing countries are often not required to build strong buildings. So, when a disaster strikes, the damage is often widespread. Yet Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world. Still, the March 11th earthquake and tsunami waves destroyed more than 14,000 buildings. Brady Cox is an assistant professor of civil engineering at the University of Arkansas. He is also an earthquake expert with an organization called Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance, or GEAR. The group studies major disasters. Professor Cox says Japan has one of the best building code systems in the world. However, he says, this earthquake was huge, one of the top 5 earthquakes in recorded history. So anytime there is an earthquake that large, there is going to be damage. The quake measured magnitude 9. He says one thing many people don't understand is that building codes are meant to prevent loss of life in earthquakes. That doesn't mean that the buildings won't have major damage. Mr. Cox says Japan has invested a lot in seismic research and design since a magnitude 7.5 earthquake in Niigata in 1964. That same year, a 9.2 quake shook the American state of Alaska. He says those 2 earthquakes opened up a lot of new research on something called soil liquefaction. Soil liquefaction is the process by which the strength or stiffness of soil is weakened by an event like the shaking of an earthquake. The soil begins to move like liquid. Professor Cox says the first step to designing an earthquake-resistant building is to study the soil. Then, the structural engineers take that information and decide the details of the construction, such as, is this going to be a steel structure? Is it going to be reinforced concrete? How will the framing of the building be designed? A team from Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance is going to Japan to examine the destruction. Mr. Cox says they will also be working on rebuilding efforts. They want to make sure that schools, hospitals, police and fire stations, and government buildings are rebuilt well. Mr. Cox and other members of GEAR went to Haiti after the powerful earthquake last year and continue to work with Haitian officials. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. A new study says The leading cause of disability in older people in low and middle income countries is dementia. The researchers disagree with the World Health Organization, which says blindness and other vision problems are the leading cause. Dementia is a loss of intellectual ability that affects memory, learning, attention, thinking, and language skills. People with dementia may forget family members or not know what day it is. Sometimes they become angry or sad, hear voices, or see things that are not there. Renata Souza from the Institute of Psychiatry at King's College London and other researchers wrote the new report. Their study looked at the causes of disability among 15,000 people aged 65 or older in 7 countries. The countries were China, India, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Mexico, and Peru. The team found that dementia was the largest cause of disability in the elderly in areas other than rural India and Venezuela. Other major causes were stroke, loss of use of arms or legs, arthritis, depression, eyesight problems, and gastrointestinal problems. In low and middle income countries, heart disease and cancer get much of the attention given to chronic diseases. The researchers say increased importance should be given to chronic diseases of the brain and mind. As populations age, societies will have to deal with more and more cases of dementia. The study says the elderly are 9% of the total population of low and middle income countries today, but their numbers are growing quickly. They are expected to reach 20% of the total population by the middle of the century. The study appeared in the Lancet Medical Journal, which published a special issue on disability. A separate study of 18 low and middle income countries dealt with children. It found that in almost half the countries, children who were not breastfed were much more likely to have a disability than those who were. The same was true of those who did not receive vitamin A supplements and those who were underweight. Children who did not take part in early learning activities or attend school were also more likely to be disabled than those who did. Researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the United States and UNICEF did the study. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. Today we have the second of 2 reports explaining how to prepare fish by drying or smoking them. We talked last week about the first steps of cleaning and salting freshly caught fish. The directions can be found on our website, voaspecialenglish.com. To dry fish, you will need either a drying table or a place to hang them. If a table is used, it should have a top made of wire screen or thin pieces of wood with space between each piece. Lay the cleaned and salted fish still wet on the table. Do not let them touch each other. Be sure that air can flow around the fish from all sides, including the top and bottom. Build a small smoky fire under the drying table for the first day to keep the flies away. After that, you can keep the flies away by covering the fish with a thin cloth. Do not let the cloth touch the fish. Fish taste better if they are out of bright sunlight while they are being dried. For best results, put the drying table under a tree. Turn the fish over every other day. Small fish will dry in about 3 days if the air is dry. Large fish will take a week or 10 days to dry. After the fish have dried, place them in a basket. Cover them with clean paper or large leaves. Then put the basket in a cool, dry place off the ground. Make sure as much of the salt water as possible is removed before you smoke the fish. The smoking can be done in a large round metal container. Remove the top of the drum and cut a small opening on one side at the bottom. Cover the top with a strong wire screen. This is where you put the fish. Build a small fire in the drum by reaching in through the opening at the bottom. Wood from fruit trees makes good fuel for your fire. The wood will give the smoked fish good color and taste. Hardwoods, such as hickory, oak, and ash, also burn well. It is important to keep the fire small so it does not burn the fish. You want a lot of smoke, but very little flame. One way to get a lot of smoke is to use green wood, not dried wood. You should smoke the fish for 5 days or longer if you plan to store them for a long time. After you finish smoking the fish, remove them and let them cool. Then wrap them in clean paper. Put the fish in baskets and keep them in a cool, dry place off the ground. Dried fish must be kept completely dry until they are eaten. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Transcripts, MP3s, and podcasts of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. There are different ways to store fish. 2 ways to keep fish for future use are canning and freezing. 2 other methods are drying and smoking. Today, we have the first of 2 reports describing step-by-step how to prepare dried or smoked fish. Begin with fish that are just out of the water. If the fish are small, leave their heads on. Cut off the heads if the fish are longer than 20 centimeters or weigh more than 115 grams. Now clean the freshly caught fish. Cut off the scales and cut open the stomach. Remove everything inside. Then wash the fish in clean water and rub salt into them. Next, put the fish in a container with a solution of 300 grams of salt and 1 liter of water. This will remove the blood from the meat. Keep the fish in the salt water for about 30 minutes. After that, wash them again in clean water. Next, put the fish in a solution that has more salt in the water. The water should be salty enough so that the fish float to the top. If the fish sink to the bottom of the container, add more salt to the water. Cover the container with a clean piece of wood. Place a heavy stone on the wood to hold it down. Leave the fish there for about 6 hours. After that, remove them from the salt water and place them on a clean surface. Cover the fish with a clean piece of white cloth and let them dry. We are not done yet. We will discuss the next steps in drying fish next week. We will also describe the smoking process. Another method of preparing fish is called dry salting. Wooden boxes or baskets are used for dry salting. After cleaning the fish, put a few of them on the bottom of the box or basket. Cover them with salt, then put more fish on top. Cover them also with salt. Continue putting fish and salt in the container until it is full. Do not use too much salt when using the dry salting method. You should use 1 part salt to 3 parts fish. For example, if you have 3 kilograms of fish, you should use 1 kilogram of salt. Remove the fish after a week or 10 days. Wash them in a mixture of water and a small amount of salt and let them dry. We have talked a lot about salt. Keep in mind that doctors advise people to limit the sodium in their diet. It can raise blood pressure, and some people have more of a reaction than others. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Transcripts and MP3 archives of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com.